People are increasingly taking stimulants like caffeine and nicotine in order to enhance learning and aid in the last-minute panic study session with which all academic hopes and dreams are pinned upon. So what are these emerging drugs, and what's the big deal about them? They fall under a class of drugs called nootropics, which includes racetams, nutraceuticals, and the drugs that we're concerned with, psychostimulants. The main drugs that are used are Ritalin, Adderall, and modafinil, all of which aid in learning and memory, and also are commonly prescribed drugs that have been repurposed as study aids. Self-reported, students believe around 70% of people are taking them, when in reality, it's only 1 in 4.
Already, Duke University in North Carolina has amended their policy to state that unauthorized use of prescription medication constitutes cheating. Currently, UTS has no such regulation, but realistically, how could this even be regulated? Picture peeing into a cup before every exam. Caffeine is relatively harmless and a generally well-tolerated drug, but the use of nootropic drugs creates an unfair advantage which causes a drug-free student to become stressed as they feel pressured to compete against people who take performance-enhancing drugs.
Study drugs, do you think they are safe?
I guess. Yeah, I reckon it's pretty safe.
I suppose if they're used under the supervision of a doctor.
Would you consider it cheating?
I think it depends on your time frame. Like some people have more time than others. Some people are working more and have less time for the study. So if you can make up those hours, sometimes it evens out playing field.
So how do these study drugs provide the cognitive enhancements students are looking for? Mechanisms of psychostimulants cause an increase in motivation energy and reduce mental fatigue. These drugs all act in a manner that affect neurotransmission and increase efficiency by direct or indirect agonism of dopa-1 receptor D1 and adrenoreceptor A2 in the prefrontal cortex at a therapeutic dosage. These stimulants act to alter monoamines, increasing catecholamine activity. Noting here, specific drugs produce different effects but act on the same mechanisms. Amphetamines are for alertness and overall increase in exertion. Methylphenidate is used for behavioral control and increasing focus. Eugeroics like modafinil are used to prevent fatigue in a similar fashion to xanthines, which include coffee. Nicotine is loosely related to these stimulatory effects at a low dosage. Racetams do not have one specific mechanism of action, but still acts upon acetylcholine as well as the glutamate receptors. The key to the cognitive enhancement here is the increase in the AMPA receptor expression, causing a lower of potential required to cause a long-term potentiation required to cause a memory to form. Finally, nutraceuticals provide neuronal protection via antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties primarily.
When I take study drugs, I find it enhances my ability to remember more information. Plus, I've heard it actually increases your long-term memory.
Over time, it actually impairs your prefrontal cortex, responsible for your judgments, behavioural inhibitions, and logical thinking. So even though your memory improves, you're basically a social retard.
Yeah, but some racetams and psychostimulants, like methylphenidate, enhance neuronal protection, so your chances of developing Alzheimer's disease are much lower.
Racetams are not FDA approved, so we're not 100% sure they offer neuronal protection. But MPH can impair behavioural flexibility, and you need that for everyday activities, like switching your attention from driving to road signs and traffic lights.
Yeah, but if it's only for short-term use, it enhances your abilities, especially for exam cramming. Plus, the time it takes to do your assignments is way lower.
Well, long-term it could lead to addiction, and the more you take it, the more your prefrontal cortex function declines, essentially damaging the qualities that you want to improve.
Yeah, but what about modafinil? It's normally given for narcolepsy, right? But it's also good for people with jet lag, students who need to stay up and study, and shift workers. It's also given to military for sleep deprivation, so it can't be too bad. Plus, in low doses, it actually keeps you calm with less anxiety.
Yeah, but in higher doses of other drugs, they increase your movement activities and can impair your attention cortices of the brain. There's no point in you staying awake if you're not focused anyway. Plus, it creates more problems for people who are easily agitated or anxious. Besides, it's unfair that these drugs aren't cheap and they accommodate to all students of a higher social class, and they can afford these drugs, while students who can't are at less of a disadvantage.
People in higher socioeconomic classes have always been advantaged when it comes to education, so I don't think it really matters. Also, let's face it, making it illegal will only create high demand and will cause the prices to surge.
There is only a limited amount of studies done on these drugs concerning their side effects and their benefits. With the minimal regulation from universities and schools on study drug usage, the choice is ultimately yours.